welcome to the Culture Cast. I am your host. Should I go by Casualty Chris this month? I think I should probably. That's what I am on Twitter all the time, but for Horrortober, I guess everybody's changing their names. You don't have to change your name, and I technically didn't change mine. I just changed my name showing up, not my screen name. I am your host, Casualty Chris, and I am joined... that was a really long way to get there. And I am joined by my good friend, one of my best friends, actually. The man whose birthday we share. We share the same birthday. I don't share his birthday. He doesn't share mine. We share the same day that we were born.
Yes.
Mike Father Malone Wallace.
Hello, everyone. This is Father Malone.
This is
on the Culture Cast.
This is FM. Father Malone.
FM, brother. What a good movie.
What?
FM.
FM what?
FM, like the radio dial, like AM and FM.
I know, but I didn't know that that's a movie.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a really good movie.
Oh.
Yeah, you should check it out. It's about the sort of waning days of FM radio in Los Angeles in the late 1970s with a spectacular concert at the end of the movie featuring Warren Zevon and Linda Ronstadt in her prime. So, I chose the right name.
Were there any Werewolves of London?
There were no Werewolves of London to be seen.
Bummer.
But Linda Ronstadt in hot pants, so that's better.
Well, there you go. So on this episode of the Culture Cast, we will not be talking about obscure 80s film, though we just spent more time on it than probably anyone has in the last decade. We are going to be talking about a little film you might have heard of from 2000 that spawned, oh dearie dear, so many films. I believe the number is sitting now at 5, though if you're listening to this in the near future, it may be more than that.
There's probably at least 3 more and a reboot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a reboot and then 3 more, because they got to reboot it first. We're going to be talking about Final Destination from 2000.
I got this feeling. This weird feeling.
The cabin starts to shake, right? And the left side blows up, and then the whole plane just explodes. The plane's gonna explode! It's not a joke! It's not a joke!
We get thrown off the plane all because Brownie has a bad dream?
I saw it.
The plane! It's gonna blow up! It's gonna blow up!
All 287 passengers are feared dead.
Because of you, I'm still alive.
In death, there are no accidents. No coincidences. And no escapes.
Did it happen again? Did you see Todd die?
What if it was our time? What if we were not meant to get off that plane? What if there is a design, then it's not finished?
By walking off the plane, you're cheating death. You have to figure out when it's coming back at you.
What are you, God now?
He knows which one of us is next.
You have a responsibility to tell me.
I knew I should have hit on Tammy in the pool that time.
I'm not gonna let it happen, okay?
Nobody has control over life and death. Unless they are taking lives and causing death. Now, can you promise me that no one else is going to die?
Get out!
I'll see you soon.
So, the film came out in March of 17th of 2000. It is directed by James Wong. Yes, James Wong of X-Files fame. It's written by Glenn Morgan and James Wong. They actually took a spec script from the X-Files that was called Flight 180, written by Jeffrey Reddick. And ironically, coincidentally, I guess, Morgan and Wong were brought on as writers/directors of the film. So they came on to work on a film that had been an X-Files spec script, which is, just weird in a way.
Weird coincidence.
Weird coincidence. So it's
or is it? Or were they just mining the producers were just mining the X-Files for everything they could.
Well, no, because Jeffrey Reddick has said that he never actually submitted the script. So,
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, he's claimed that he never submitted it. You can actually go on Bloody Disgusting and read it. I think it was uploaded a couple years back. But yeah, it was never submitted to the X-Files, but he actually rewrote it and then they rewrote it. So kind of an interesting story. This is one of the kind of things about the X-Files that kind of spawned other things. Obviously this being, fucking Final Destination, which ended up being a massive success. I mean, 5 sequels is nothing to scoff at. So the film stars Devon Sawa, Ali Larter, Kerr Smith, and of course Tony Todd. He's in, I think, 1, 2, 3 of these movies. The first one, the second one, and the fifth one. Which is just...
his voice is technically in the third one.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. The fifth one is...
Yes.
The fifth one is... We'll get to it, because we're not going to talk about all of them, but we are going to talk about the first and the fifth one for specific reasons. We are going to talk spoilers if you've never seen Final Destination.
In 19 years.
In 19 years, yeah. If you haven't seen it, you're 19 years old now. Please watch it.
Yeah.
So
it's time.
Yeah, it's time. So what do you think of the film, Father Malone?
I remembered it more fondly than having rewatched it. There is quite a lot that I really like about the movie. Just to go back a second, the X-Files was a great television series.
X-Files is a great.
Yeah, it was, is, continues to be. For my money, Glenn Morgan and James Wong were the best writers on that show. I always knew...
Wait. Hold on. You're saying that Glenn Morgan is better than Darren Morgan?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 1,000%. Absolutely.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah.
Because I disagree with that 100%.
Okay, well, I get that Darren Morgan is a more sort of metatextual and funny kind of guy, but you can't get to Darren Morgan without people like Glenn Morgan and James Wan doing all of the fucking legwork and putting down a whole lot of shoe leather so that he can make some sort of metatextual comment on it.
Right. Well, and also Darren Morgan. I mean, whenever you saw a Darren Morgan episode of the show, you knew that it was going to be something special. But yeah, I mean, I like Darren Morgan a lot, but Glenn Morgan really is the one who put in the time and effort to get the show.
Yeah, I mean, to come in a couple of seasons later and make some comment on the series as a whole, is satisfying for fans because they've been watching it for 3 seasons and now can understand from maybe some outsider point of view, what the whole series is about. And that's great, but if the Darren Morgan episodes don't exist, I'm not crying. If the Glenn Morgan, James Wong episodes were gone, the show would be much less than it actually was.
Well, it would be very little of a show.
Yeah, man. Most of the best episodes of that series would be gone. Those guys, they are no longer a team, but they were for a very long time. They created a series called Space Above and Beyond, which lasted just 1 season, Chris. And
we had some behind-the-scenes conversations about our next show that we are going to be covering on the 1-season show. I'm not going to tell you what we're covering yet, but we almost covered Space Above and Beyond.
Okay, well, when you do, I want to be a guest on every single episode. So that series I thought was really good. Chris Carter created a second series in the late 90s called Millennium, which I thought the first season was scattershot. It had some interesting ideas in it, but never kind of coalesced in my mind. The second season, he went off to make an X-Files movie, left the series in the stead of Morgan and Wong, and created what is, in my mind, one of the best seasons of television I have ever seen in my entire life. A season of television that 20 years removed still haunts me. These guys are phenomenally talented. So when I heard that there was a movie coming out and they were behind it, I was super stoked because for all the reasons I've already mentioned. So, and I did like this movie. This is a long way to answer your question. I do like this movie. I think it's pretty good. I think they actually perfected it a couple of films down the line, because they came back for Final Destination 3, which to me is the best film in the entire series. It seems like the perfect distillation of everything that each of the movies is trying to do. Now, barring that, as I said, there's a lot to like in this movie. I love the idea of a villain, a protagonist that is never actually on screen. It's just a force of nature coming to correct what had happened. I like most of the performances in the movie. I'm not the biggest fan of Devon Sawa. There's something about him that just bugs the fuck out of me. But does feature one of my favorite actresses. She doesn't work enough, and I think that's actually by choice. Kristen Cloak, who plays their teacher in the film. I love her. I think she's great. And in fact, I think her sequence, her sort of death comes for her sequence is probably the best scene in the entire movie. Overall, I do like the movie. I think it's better as a warm-up for part 3, but there it is, to answer your question in a way too roundabout way.
Well, and Kristen Cloak is none other than Glenn Morgan's wife.
Oh, yeah, definitely. She was also the star of Space Above and Beyond. In one of the best episodes of The X-Files, was a featured character the entire season of, second season of Millennium. I love her tiny bones. I think she's great. She's also starred in Black Christmas, which was Glenn Morgan's film with James Wong that he directed. Like, these guys sort of traded off who was directing the film sort of one after the other. So, like, James Wong would direct one, Glenn Morgan would direct the next, and so on and so forth.
And I love the episode that she's in of The X-Files, The Field Where I Died. I love that episode a lot.
It's so good, right?
Right. I mean, it's a great episode that ends up having, like, no bearing on the show as a whole, but at the same time, it totally does. Which is...
Yeah.
It's one of those episodes that, like, I know it makes a lot of lists of episodes that are really important for the show's mythology. It's an important episode, but not for the ways that you might think. So...
Yeah. It doesn't further the mythology of the show necessarily. However, as a character piece and knowing who that guy is, like it hits all the right cylinders, man. Like that's a muscular bit of television.
And Kristen Cloak does a fantastic smoker's voice accent thing.
Oh boy, don't she? She's got a deep smoky voice.
Well, when she does that, she sure does.
Oh man, I love Kristen Cloak.
But back to Final Destination. I like this movie a lot, but it is not my favorite of the series either. I think it was a good starting place. It has a really great hook. It has a great hook that ends up being a really good hook for the rest of the series. And other directors take it and run with it more than they did in this film.
I agree with that.
And that's fine, but I mean, the intro to this film, the first 20 minutes of this movie are fantastic. Where you have them getting off the plane and the plane explodes. Like, that scene is great. It really could have only existed pre-2001.
No doubt.
Like, the entire 20 minutes of this, first 20 minutes of this movie are so crazy pre-2001 that, like, I have seen fewer things that did not understand how close they were to being completely changed by world events as this film's airport scenes at the beginning. Because those kids would have been in
Not a lot could be done.
No, those kids would have been in fucking Guantanamo. Right? Like, Devon Sawa's character would have been in fucking Guantanamo if he had been like, there's something wrong with the plane, we need to all get off. And then it explodes. It's like, you're on a one-way ticket to getting your ass fucked by a bunch of fucking prisoners in Guantanamo Bay. Like,
yeah, no doubt, man. Like, like the fact that they're allowed to leave at all is shocking in a post 9/11 society. But there was a time when going through security and dealing with airports was not pleasant necessarily, but certainly okay.
Well, and again, it also comes back to this idea that pre-2001, you could just go to the gate.
Oh, yeah, man. You used to be able to just sort of park your car, jump in, walk in, go to where your family was going to show up and, greet them as they walked off the plane. No more.
Yeah. And so that, I mean, again, like, if we're just talking about, like, the way this film kind of exists in pre-2001, it's super weird. And, again, it's kind of like this weird time capsule of what that looked like. But outside of that, it's a perfectly fine, fun movie. But there's not much to it, unfortunately.
No, there's not. It doesn't look. It never. Horror films tend to set up rules that they then break just for dramatic purposes. I don't know that this one does it all too often. There are a couple of instances where I'm like, okay, but other movies have been lionized far more. That have been sort of more egregiously breaking their own rules. I think this pretty much sets up what the stakes are and what the antagonists are, and sticks to it for the most part. It all comes down to whether or not you care about the characters, which, Morgan won't go a long way to making us like everyone who gets off the plane. Even the character's a total fucking dickhead, played by Kerr Smith. You can kind of get his motivation behind it. I always applaud them and the character work that they sort of they layer into the script. Look, there are a couple of instances where I'm just like, what is happening? Like, the first sort of kid to get it, sort of like the death's design after he's escaped the thing, the kid who gets strangled in his own bathtub, which, by the way, that sequence is great. Like, what a horrible way to go. What a stupid, ignominious death.
Chad Donella, a.k.a. that dickhead from Saw 3D.
Oh, is he? Okay, all right. That guy, his accent just drives me crazy. Like, if I said that there's something about Devon Sawa I don't like I really don't like this guy, Chad Donella, and this, like, weirdo kind of, like, Brooklyn from the 1950s accent. Like, I could easily see him storming the beaches at Normandy, or in a B-17 where his character's named, like, Static, the radio operator. There's something so stupid about the accent he's doing, but, like, that death is pretty fucking spectacular, except it does seem that the little clothesline that they have in their bathtub, which I've never seen outside of a hotel, so I'm not sure why they have it in there. Honestly, I have seen them in hotels. I've seen them before. But not anything that hasn't been refurbished in the past 25 years. But certainly not in someone's home. That's so weird. Okay, let's just say for the sake of argument that they do have it. That's fine. I like the fact that he slips into that tub. I like the fact that it's wrapped around his throat and that he can't get out because he's already crushed these bottles of shampoo that's keeping him slippery and in the tub and strangling. All that would have been perfect, except it does seem as if the rope itself keeps tightening and going up.
Well, that's death. That's death.
Yeah, that's death. Right, but like most of these movies, it's always just some fiendish Rube Goldberg's device, taking these kids out.
I mean, that's the joke about these movies, right? Is Final Destination is just the Rube Goldberg machines that kill you. And that's what it is.
But when they're done right,
but this movie, I think, I think this movie, again, it's such a good setup for what we have coming later in the series that in this film, everything feels very pedestrian. And honestly, looking at what we've seen, like, I've seen all of them. I'm assuming you've seen either all of them or most of them. These are almost passé, which is not, it's not their fault in a way, because again, in 2000, when this film was made, not only was it a massive success when it came out, but no one could have known that ahead of time. And so they didn't know that this was going to be a franchise, a media franchise, 5 films spanning 9 years, films, comics, novels. Like, no one could have known that. So they kept it pretty grounded. But, like, with most horror franchises, I mean, Nightmare, Friday, Saw, Exorcist. Well, maybe not Exorcist so much, but...
Not The Exorcist.
Saw, any of the big horror franchises, they start to trend towards the ridiculous more and more. Because they have to keep one-upping themselves. Because they figure if you're not one-upped, people aren't going to have any interest in coming and seeing what you're doing, especially if it's the Friday night crowd.
Right, and so, yeah, I mean, Yeah, it's exactly what you said. It's like, it's not this film's fault that people would take the concept and take it to like this extreme level where like it becomes more and more fiendishly interesting and intricate. And so now that's kind of what we expect from the series. So you can't look back at the film necessarily and go, yeah, well, that's I get it. It's kind of cool, but it's not like what they did in part 4. And I think all of the things that they're working in here like still work, but it does suffer a bit from that.
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, like a character's just sort of stepping out in front of a bus. I still think it's actually.
I think that's the most effective death in the film, though.
It might be. That's funny because it's like it's the simplest thing in the fucking world.
Yeah, she
it's
goes,
a character
I'm not gonna be fucking dead meat, and then she goes, boom, dead.
Yeah, it is shocking as all get out. It still works. I mean, I knew it was coming. I've seen the movie not a dozen times, but like say, half a dozen times, and that death still works every single time.
Well, it's also fun, right? There's like a certain sense of humor with the character saying, well, I'm not going to die, and then boom, you're dead.
Yeah.
In the Final Destination films, the moment you say fucking drop dead, you're going to drop dead.
You will die immediately, yeah.
Yeah, you are the one who is on the chopping block if you are the one telling other characters to die. But again, there's a lot of this that just feels so... Like, again, coming back to this after 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 4 is fucking trash. Absolutely the worst of the bunch. That's the
4 is the racing track, the racetrack.
Yeah, the one where the guy gets his like guts sucked out through his asshole.
Yeah.
It's like that's my point. Yeah. Like in this film, you have a character who dies from like slipping in a bathtub, falling knives that it creates an explosion. You have a character who gets killed by some shrapnel underneath a train. You have a character who gets killed by a falling sign. Like, all of those things are so believable. And then you get to the 4th one where you have a character who gets his guts sucked out through his butt while he's stuck to the bottom of a pool. And I don't remember if this is 4 as well, where the characters get cooked alive inside of the tanning beds. I think.
No. That is part 3. I love that death. I love that death.
Yeah, because part 4. Part 4 is the one where it ends. Yeah. The ending of part 4 is where they're all killed essentially off screen.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
But my point here is like where this series went to is so far from this that like I like this film a lot, but it is just kind of like meh. Like who cares? Like
it seems quaint, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It seems very quaint compared to 4 or 5 or even 2. 2, I think 2 still in my mind has the best intro of all the films.
It's that. Yeah, that's kind of the only part I like about that movie. The logging truck.
Yeah, anytime I'm driving and I see a logging truck in front of me, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, man, and you know what? I'm up in the Pacific Northwest a lot, so I see them a lot, and my mind immediately goes there. So yeah, it's that's that. Thank you, Final Destination 2, for implanting that in my head. I don't think the rest of that movie is any way good, but like that opening sequence is pretty fucking spectacular.
Now, I will say, and this is, again, something else that needs to be mentioned about the series, is no characters ever survive, which, to me, always felt cheap.
Well, no. This one, people do at the end of this one.
But they all end up dying anyways.
Well, the Ally Larder character makes it to the second film.
And
Clear. Her name is Clear.
Clear Rivers. Sure it is.
Rivers.
And Devon Sawa's character dies in between movies. Like, that is the one complaint I have with the Final Destination franchise as a whole, is that it never feels like, look, you have a Nightmare film or a Friday film. You don't expect the characters who die and the characters who survive. You expect that if the character survives, they survive and they go on and do whatever, unless they come back in another film. In this film series, if they survive at the end of the movie, you know they're going to die, like, pretty quickly after the film's over anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
And it's like,
the idea is that death is going to get you, right? I mean,
and, like, so it almost makes everything that happens in the films unconsequential anyways.
that is true. I mean, we're effectively...
But, like, you don't know that going into this film, and you don't know that when this film ends. Because, again, they addressed it in the second film, where you have Ali Larter explode. Literally explode. Like, literally charred, and, like, her body flies at the camera, which is, great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... people used to... sort of complain about slasher films in the 1980s, like where, it just became, and this is not an incorrect assessment of those films, we're just waiting to see the interesting ways these people are going to die. I think this series is the ultimate as far as that goes, because as you said, like, no one is getting out alive, so you kind of just feel like, well, what are we doing here? I mean...
But yeah, and that's where the first film, in my mind, gets away with so much, is because going into this first film, if you didn't know there were 5 more films, if you haven't seen the second film, just taking this film alone as a standalone film, the character of Alex Browning and Clear Rivers get away, live happily ever after, they've dodged death. But then, again, we all know the way the second film, it addresses Alex Browning. I believe he gets killed by, like, a falling brick or something so...
Some bullshit, yeah.
Some fucking stupid shit. But again, that works into the way that the film is, and, like, kind of the universe exists. But yeah, like, it's just, that's my issue with the series as a whole, is they always keep being like, and the movie's over, and they survive. Like, nah, just kill them. Because they're going to die anyways. And it's not like they're going to die of old age. Like, no, they're going to die. Like, something bad is going to happen to them because death can't not do that. Because they dodged.
You know what's funny about that is, as I said, my favorite film in the series is the third film that Morgan and Wong came back for. And they themselves said that... they could feel like when they were doing previews for the movies to see how it was playing, so they go back and reshoot or re-edit, like the time difference between the first and the third film, which included that period of 9/11 and whatever, they said that they felt that audiences had gotten a lot meaner, that their original intention with the end of that third film was that a handful of those characters were going to survive.
Oh, I mean, the characters in 3 were supposed to survive. We're supposed to survive.
Yeah, and then they tested it, and they realized that, like, all of the comment cards were just like, why aren't they all dead? Like, it wasn't even a question of will they or won't they. It was like, when will they? When is it going to happen? So that's kind of an interesting sea change as far as audiences go, because even in the most egregious of the Friday the 13th or the Freddy's, you were going to get like one person survive, and we were good with that as an audience. And now these days it's like, okay, wait, why did they get away? No, go back and kill them.
Right.
It's kind of crazy.
And that to me is my kind of issue. I think with Final Destination, this film as a whole is, it hasn't, knowing what we know now about the series, it has not aged well. Just like the idea. Does that make sense? Like the way the film handles the characters that survive, in quotations, it's not great. But then again, that's not the film's fault. That's a fault of the franchise and where it ended up going.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can't point to any part. And if they had gone with
the original ending, it wouldn't have mattered anyways, because the original ending has Devon Sawa's character sacrificing himself, and Ali Larter survives, but she's pregnant, so she avoids death. Which, by the way, they went and addressed in the second film, but then those characters from the second film end up dying off screen in the third film anyways. So it's it's the problem is like, either you want characters to survive or you don't. If the characters can never outsmart death, I get it. But don't be like, well, they can, but they can't. Like, stop. They can't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some of the later films...
End of story. No one...
Right, I mean,
death.
That's ultimately it, right? I mean, that's the takeaway from these movies is you're all going to die.
Exactly. You can't stop death. Even if you... you save a baby. In the second one, those characters, the characters of, AJ Cook and the cop, they end up dying off screen. They're like accidentally pushed into a wood chip or some bullshit, like some just nonsense. But still, it addresses the point of don't try to make it seem like characters are going to survive. I just can't stand that in this series.
So if you ignore the rest of the films, at least in this case, you have some survivors.
Yeah. Well, in this film, sure. You have Sawa and Ali Larder.
Hooray!
And I will tell you, I like the way this film ends.
You like we've suddenly decided to go to Paris?
Yeah, I like that. Like, oh, we're in Paris now, guys. And then, you know, the character of Carter
mayhem ensues.
Yeah, character of Carter dies anyways.
Yeah, man. With the Morgan Wong loved to pepper in their numbers, so we get 180 yet again. The sort of French sign flipped upside down turns into the 180.
Yeah, I like this movie, but again, this isn't like Nightmare on Elm Street or the original Saw. This is not a film that can really stand on its own. Like we said at the beginning, it's a good jumping point for everything else that comes later.
Yeah.
It is quaint.
The Rube Goldberg sort of criticism is not wrong, and it's kind of what we want from these movies. Like, as it turns out, these guys could not have predicted that. And it's my understanding that death as a character was supposed to be a little more prevalent sort of early on. Like, you know, they have a couple of flashes of it, of like a shadow kind of moving. And I'm
glad that wasn't a thing, though.
I am too. Like, I'm glad they sort of they moved away from it almost immediately because, you know, like a hint of something being there is fine. But really, I like, you know, watching the machine in action to the point where, you know, in the later films, it's all about fake outs. It's like the entire scene will be showing you the potentiality. Is it the faulty electrical socket here? Is it that lawnmower outside? Is it this plane flying overhead? You know.
How do you feel about that? Those like fake outs? Because I think Final Destination 5 in my mind is like the biggest one, like the biggest film of all five that does that. But that
it's too much.
Okay, it doesn't bother me. Because again, it feels like the writer in that film, Eric Hesserer, it feels like he understood that what the expectations were going to be.
Yeah.
And instead of like playing into your expectations, he does something more than that, which I'm okay with.
I can respect that, but at the same time, it's like, you know, we all got used to certain little tropes in horror movies where the character opens the refrigerator door. When they close it, someone will be standing there. They do the same thing with mirrors in bathrooms. Like, once the mirror is closed, they'll see something behind them. And we all got used to anticipating that scare. So maybe the first film that sort of played on that, it was fine. But, like, once you see it in a movie, like, if a character is in a horror movie and they open the refrigerator door, then I know nothing is behind there, and I know they're only doing that to fake me out. And I'm just like, quit wasting my time and get to where you're going.
Yeah. I will say, though, talking about Final Destination 5, because I think, again, I don't think there's a point in ever doing all 5 Final Destination movies as a podcast, though. That sounds like fun, honestly. The thing about 5 that I did appreciate was that it linked back into the overall series. Because
I appreciated that too.
Technically, Final Destination 5 is the original Final Destination movie.
Right.
Not even technically, it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you put them in chronological order, 5 is before 1.
Right, because the characters in 5 that survive, Nicholas D'Agosto and Emma Bell's characters, where were they at the end of the 5th film, which ended up being the beginning of the 1st film? Oh, they were on the plane to Paris.
Yeah.
That exploded, and they noticed Devon Sawa's character. And they don't get off, or they can't get off, and they both die. And then one of the characters, I believe the character's name is like Nathan or something, he gets killed by a landing gear that crushes him and kills him from the airplane.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, I got to rewatch that particular one. I mean, I remember going into it just thinking, it's just going to be another iteration of part 4. We're just waiting for everyone to die. And I thought there was at least a little bit more care and thoughtfulness, if that's the right word, as far as linking all of these things back up. And some of those deaths in that movie are pretty fucking great. That's the one with the gymnast, right? Where
oh my God.
Wow.
That misdirection alone is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Like, I'm not taking back my criticism of films that do that, but in that case, the payoff like equals, or is at least a definite a definite payoff. Yeah, because that's so horrific.
That's why I like 5 so much. Is because 5 has the most likable protagonist of any of them. Again, in my mind, Nicholas D'Augusto is great. I like Miles Fisher a lot. Miles Fisher did a lot of like promotional stuff for the movie too. So he did a Final Destination Saved by the Bell parody music video with the entire cast in it. That is the song is great on its own, but the music video is hilarious. But yeah, it's my favorite one of the series because it does what the first film does, but through the lens of the rest of the films. So it takes what made the first film great and actually moves it farther in a direction that is like very much an evolution of the series. So,
I can see that.
And the opening bridge collapse is almost as good as the car crash from the beginning of the second film.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do, like I said, I do got to revisit that one. I do remember liking that one.
Yeah, the first Final Destination, as great as that opening airplane explosion is, every other film like ups the ante so much that you get to see like the outcomes of each of the characters as opposed to just like really quickly. Well, this guy gets sucked out, and then the rest of them essentially burn to death. Like,
yeah, that the opening plane sequence is like maybe 2 minutes. It's real quick. I mean, because what can you do when a plane is being ripped apart? It's going to be a fast process. And honestly, like a year before this movie, they did it in Fight Club, and David Fincher made that like briefest of 20 seconds fucking horrifying. So yeah, I agree. The other films like figured out how to do it a lot better. All of the openings of these movies are pretty fucking solid, even if the rest of the movie is not that great.
I think the NASCAR one is so bad.
Well, the effects do not. I'm not going to say they didn't hold up because they were bullshit to begin with.
What you mean? 3D is not important?
I know, right? 4, like, overall is not that good a movie at all. You can sort of dispense with that sort of out of hand. But the others, I think, are still worth a look. Although, I don't know. For me, it's, it's like the reverse Star Trek here. It's all the odd number ones are really good. 1, 3, and 5.
I would agree. And again, it comes back to this idea that, for me, this was a great launching place for the franchise. But when we're looking at it, with 5 films in the bag, with a possible remake coming out in the next couple years.
Sure.
At the beginning of 2019, Melton and Dunstan, who have worked on, fucking tons of shit. They worked on some of the later Saw movies. They're a writing team, obviously. They worked on, I think, like Saw 4, 5, 6, 7. Saw, I think Saw 6 is the one that I like. Yeah, yes. Saw 6 is the good one. Saw 6 is the one where it's like...
I have to revisit that, and I have to revisit that whole series.
That's... I bet you do. That's the one where it's like the insurance guy, like the life insurance, and he's like going through the traps, but he's not like doing them. He's like trying to determine what the outcome is going to be. Do you remember that?
Okay. Yeah. I honestly don't. I don't think I got that far. I tapped out on that series after maybe the 3rd film. But I love Shawnee Smith. She's in those, right? She's great.
Yeah, she sure is.
Yeah, she's spooky as fuck, that girl.
Yeah, Saw 6 is great, but again, those two guys are working on a coming soon reboot of Final Destination. And look, I mean, I think Final Destination is kind of one of those, it's a great idea, and, give someone the opportunity, a little bit of a budget, and let them go see what they can do.
Sure. Reboot is kind of a funny phrase when it comes to the series because it's not like they were telling one story altogether, except 1 and 5.
Well, but they did all take place in the same universe. I mean,
they would reference the other movies, but only in a way of like, this has happened before.
Well,
Flight 180.
And the first and second film, I would say, take place more. The second film is more of a sequel to the first film than any of the other films are.
Yeah, I mean, because they had one of the characters from the first film
Exactly.
return, but like if Ali Larter hadn't shown up, then they would have been like, "That's fine. We don't need a
Remember that plane crash, guys?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
that's essentially what it is in like 3 and 4. Is like, remember that weird thing? And it's like, yeah, okay, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 does have a pretty good death with that kid getting smashed by the pane of glass. I will say that.
That my gal Jess, that's her favorite death in any of the movies. The pane of glass, like slapping that guy into paste, which I can't disagree with. That's pretty goddamn good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the films is the kills are what make the film so great. And if the plot's not great, I guess some people just kind of give it a pass.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said it before. The third one's my favorite, and that might be because, like, as much as I can relate to an like a car crash or a plane sort of exploding, like I can't in any way relate to a NASCAR death or a suspension bridge necessarily. But I'm one of these people who. I am not a fan of roller coasters in any way, shape, or form, and like even when I do get on one that I find fun, I'm constantly thinking, are these rivets secure? When was the last time somebody walked this track for safety? So that particular sequence at the beginning of that movie really hits me hard.
Well, and the death of one of the characters falling off the roller coaster and being cut in half unsummarily is pretty great.
It's pretty good, man. And that one's got Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's like a solid lead. Like she seems like the only sort of actor of this entire series who has gone on to bigger and better things.
That's true, which is again unfortunate because a lot of the actors are great. But I mean, if you don't, if you don't consider The Fanatic a great film featuring Devon Sawa and John Travolta playing a mentally retarded character great, I don't know what films you're watching.
Yeah, I don't know what movies I'm watching either because I have yet to experience the joy of that particular cinematic effort.
Well, and again, just like this film, Devon Sawa seems to be bored. Because Devon Sawa seems to be bored in this movie.
He seems to be bored in everything he's in, man.
That's my point.
It's just, I don't get it. I do not see the appeal, but then I guess most people don't either.
Boy, isn't that the case?
Yeah, so I don't know, man. I guess ultimately, this is a good movie. Like, I can't. There's not too much I can slag off on it. I particularly like the sequence where he's in that cabin alone and he's death-proofing it. Like putting corks on all of the potential sharp objects.
Yeah,
eating out of a can. It's a good scene.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's a fun movie. I just don't. I think it's it's good for what it is, but it just doesn't. It doesn't.
It's all potential, and they picked that ball up and ran with it later on.
The potential is eventually realized.
Yeah, worth a look though.
Yeah, I would agree. If you want to see where it started, the kills aren't really as bombastic and over the top or gory as 2, 3, 4, and 5, but it is a good and interesting place for the series to start.
Absolutely, worth your time.
What would you give the film out of 5?
I'd give it a 3. I'd give it a 3. Yeah. 3's good, right?
Yeah, 3's
better than bad. Better than bad, not awesome, but worth a look. It's on TV. Put it on, watch it.
Well, probably download it or watch it on Netflix or something because if it's on TV, they're going to edit the best parts out.
Oh yeah. Okay, so yeah, if it's on one of these premium stations or it's a streaming availability, you're not going to be wasting your time watching this movie.
Yeah, agreed. So we'll take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast.
She's awake.
We'll be quick and quiet.
I don't want to be either.
I'll miss you so much.
I'll come back all the time.
All the time? Did a great job. She's a good kid.
We did.
What are they doing next door?
I guess the neighbors are making up.
Leave it open.
Think we can take them?
It's worth a try.
It's just us now.
5, 6, 4. I heard noises. I didn't want to disturb you, but at the house, I was scared.
Claire's hearing things.
What are you hearing?
Voices, whispering, a picture fell. Missing girl. Remember this?
No.
I stopped at this cafe to get a coffee and I see Norman, but he wasn't alone.
Look at this. Doesn't that look exactly like a face? And there's a hand, see?
Someone who's very close to me seems to be in contact with some kind of entity or spirit.
There's a ghost in my house.
Any idea what she wants?
She said... Did you know her?
I had an affair with her. She came out here to the house, threatened to kill herself.
Get out!
We can put this behind us. Our life can go on. It's not too late.
You had an affair with a girl who killed herself, and now she's trying to hurt you.
What does she look like?
She looked like me, only she had green eyes.
Stop!
Hello, Dr. Spencer.
You're not yourself today, are you?
No, I'm not. I think she's starting to suspect something. Your wife.
That's right, on the next Culture Cast, we're going to be taking a look at the Robert Zemeckis-directed horror film. I cannot wait. I don't know how horrific it is. It might actually just be bad. We're going to be talking about What Lies Beneath.
I love that movie.
Oh, okay. It has Harrison Ford in it. That's all I know.
Yeah, man. Michelle Pfeiffer. James Remar.
Do you know who it's written by?
I do, and now I don't. Who is it?
Clark fucking Gregg.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. What? Yeah, man. That's
weird, right?
Yeah, you know what? That's a slow burn thriller. I dig that flick a lot. So
I've never seen it, so
yeah, everyone's mileage is going to vary on it, and that's all I'll say. But skillfully made. The funny thing is, I'm sure you'll come up with this on the podcast itself, but this is the movie he made in between filming Castaway. So, like, they filmed the first half of Castaway where Tom Hanks was, like, fat and whatever, and then rather than, like, send the crew away for a year so that he could get thin, they made this film, and as soon as they wrapped this, they went back and filmed the rest of Castaway while Tom Hanks was getting skinnier and skinnier to complete filming Castaway. And I can't think of a film sort of thrown together in the midst of nothing that could be better than this particular movie. So good luck. I envy you watching it for the first time.
Well, and I'm looking forward to it now, knowing that somehow a film that I don't like had bearing on a film that could be good. So there you go. Because Castaway, I don't get it at all.
It's okay. I'm not the biggest fan of that movie either. I think it could have been a lot better. But that it spawned this film makes me very happy.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching it. However, until then, where can people find you?
You can always find me on my YouTube channel, OughtFive Films. Check out my series You've Never Seen or my new series, Unerrant Pilots. You can also hear me over on Chronicles from the Crypt, talking with you, Casualty Chris, about the HBO television series Tales from the Crypt. And you can also, this is so ridiculous, you can also hear me over on Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast, where you and me and Detroit's own Mr. Mike White talk about the first and best reboot of the Twilight Zone television series from 1985.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to plug. Now you know how I feel. Since you plugged pretty much everything already, the couple things that I am on that are not this one-season show where I talk about shows that only lasted one season. I am a co-host on that with my friend Jess Byard, and I do a podcast with the aforementioned Mike White. That podcast is called The Kolchak Tapes, where we talk about Kolchak the Night Stalker. We're almost done. And we're almost, we're turning that into a Barney Miller podcast. So there's that as well. And big thanks as always to you, Father Malone, for joining me for this.
My pleasure.
I know that this was not a bad film, so we had pretty much positive things to say about it, which is good.
Yeah. It's good to be positive.
Yeah, exactly. And big thanks as always to _91 for the music for the Culture Cast. That track is called Thunderous. And make sure to check out the next episode.